Okay, good morning, everybody, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday morning as we are studying together Perashat Bo El Paro. God says to Moshe, come to Paro and deliver the warning before plague number 8. We have this week the last 3 plagues, 8, 9, and 10. Arbe, Hoshech, and Bechorot, grasshoppers, darkness, and the slaying of the firstborns. And God says to Moshe, come to Paro, because I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order that I may display my signs amongst them. God says to Moshe, the reason I am hardening his heart is so that I can punish him, so that I can do more makot. I don't want to let him off easy now. You had a chance. You should have taken your chance when I gave it to you. You should have left when the door was open. But now God says, no more. Now you don't have a choice. Now you're going to get all 10 plagues. Ulma'an, and take a look, my friends, at Pasuk Bet. And so that, tesaper be'oznei bincha uben bincha. Rabotai, please listen to this. And I need you to write this down, fold this up, put it in your back pocket, unless you're going to put your pants in the washing machine, then save it in your drawer. But save this for Pesach, okay? Lema'an tesaper be'oznei bincha. God says it's your obligation to say over and to storytell to your children, uben bincha, and your grandchildren, et asher hit'alalti b'Mitzrayim, the mockery that I made of Egypt. We all know that there's a mitzvah on Pesach called Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's right here. Leman tesaper. Part of our obligation as parents is to teach our children. You know, a lot of times on Pesach we get all excited and we're seeing our friends and families and loved ones, and we forget what the goal of the night is. I know people that they do not go to extended family on Pesach. They stay home and they will make sure to spend the holiday only with their children, not even their own siblings, not even with their parents. They will stay home because the focus of the night of Pesach must be teaching my children, instilling in them emunah, and teaching them about the fundamentals of our religion. The one night a year that we have to do this. Of course, in the world that we live in today, we must make sure that we teach them every day, as much as possible, because they're being fed so much garbage from the world. We have to be so careful what they're reading, what they're watching, what they're being exposed to. The world today is exposable and discoverable from the palms of their hands. It used to be the kid stayed in the parents' house and he had zero influence except for his parents until he was 18. And by that time, 18, you already have your decisions pretty much made, your mind. Whatever your parents taught you is pretty much what you're going to believe. But today that's not true. Today the kid could live at home and he could be at the same time in LA, and the same time in Africa, and the same time in Asia and in Europe, and in all 7 continents at the same time. And therefore we have to be very, very careful today. But the night of the year that is known and opportune for instilling emunah and belief in Hashem in our children is Leil HaPesach. And therefore, wherever we are on Pesach, and I know right now we're planning for winter vacation if we're going for Yeshiva week, right? We're not preparing for our Pesach trips yet. But whenever we do go for Pesach, wherever we end up being, whether we're on a trip or a program or home, make sure that we are teaching and engaging our children. This is the night, okay? But there is something very important over here. The Pasuk doesn't say just to tell your kids. But the Pasuk says a word here. I don't know if you picked it up. It's not just tell your kids what happened in Egypt. I'll read the Pasuk again in Hebrew. Take a listen if you could hear what's the Pasuk emphasizing. The Pasuk says, Lema'an tesaper be'oznei bincha, recount to your children and their children, et asher hit'alalti b'Mitzrayim. You notice the extra word here? The Pasuk doesn't say what I did to Egypt. The Pasuk says the way I mocked Egypt. Hit'alalti, Rashi says, sahakti. The joke that I made out of them. Ki ani metzahek bo. God says, I have mocked him, for it is I who hardened his heart and exacted punishments of him. the Ramban, Nachmanides. And therefore, what God is telling us through Moshe is that we have an obligation not only to tell over to our children what happened, but we have an obligation to mock Egypt, to make a joke out of what happened. And I always wondered why. Why is it so important to make a mockery out of what happened? Just tell your children, they did this and they did that, and look how important it is. Teach your children. Give them the information. Why laugh? And really, I think it comes back to what we said, which is so beautiful, and that is that we spoke about this a couple of days ago, right? Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Chokhmah is knowledge, information. Bina is what we expound on. But then there's Da'at, and Da'at is taking what we know up here and being able to bring it into our actions, into our hearts. Because ultimately, we behave based on our feelings, right? Feelings, emotions. A person could know something, but they're not able to pull the trigger because they haven't brought it down yet. And therefore, part of success in doing in life is being able to feel. Not enough in the mind. If I see somebody and you explain to me, I explain to you, they're very poor and they can't afford and they're paying and they're struggling for a house, for this, for that, you'll help them. But if you could feel their pain, you'll help them much more. The story is told of a rabbi that went to collect for a certain family. And when he knocked on the house of a very wealthy man, the man said, "Rabbi, come in." And the rabbi said, "No, I'm good. I'm running to the next house. I came quickly just to collect. Do you have any funds that you could help? Any tzedakah?" And it was freezing outside. And the rabbi says, "Yes." The man says, "I can help you, Rabbi. Come in. Let's close the door. It's very cold." And the rabbi says, "No. I'm leaving. Just whatever you have." And the man's in his robe and his pajamas, so he runs. He says, "Okay, I'll be right back." He runs. He grabs his check. He comes back. He starts filling it out. He hands the rabbi a check. And he says, "Rabbi, I don't understand. Why do you insist on not coming in? You're keeping the door open. The house is getting cold." And what did the rabbi say? The rabbi responded to this very wealthy man. He said, "Because I just wanted for one moment, you should be able to internalize and feel the cold that this family is feeling every single night of their lives. To be able to feel. And sometimes in the world that we live in today, we don't feel anymore. Everything's so robotic. Even when we help people with tzedakah, even when we do great things, a lot of time it's done in the comfort of our chairs, with the touch of a button, with the swipe of a card. I give tzedakah, and I swipe, and here you go, take the money that you need. But there's zero emotions that go into it. There's no feeling. We don't see the pain. We don't feel the pain. We're not able to relate. It's a very big loss. It's a very big loss. And therefore, we need to try to keep our emotions engaged in the process of life. We can't be separate. We can't be disengaged. By the way, the parasha speaks at the end about which mitzvah in this week's parasha. Anyone know? All the way at the end. What's the mitzvah that's discussed all the way at the end of this week's parasha? Mitzvah of tefillin. Did you know that? Tefillin is discussed in this week's parasha. And we know, the Torah tells us, to place tefillin on the head and also tefillin on the arms. And really the message, and anyone that wears tefillin knows this. The tefillin, we put it on the head, but the straps, where do the straps go? The straps go around, in front, all the way down. And I think the message is so beautiful. And that is that you cannot allow the knowledge that you have to remain in your head. You have to bring what you know through the straps down into your body. We also know that we tie the 7 straps around the hands. And those 7 straps correspond to the 7 midot of Hesed, Geburah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut, right? So there's a lot of midot things going on. But that's why I think it's so powerful and important, not just to discuss and intellectualize with our children, But the Torah says, laugh, engage your emotions, because then it's a different experience than if it's just in your mind. When it's in your mind, it's nice, but then if you laugh, you bring it into your heart. You know, there's a concept called litz. It's a midah. It's a certain person, a personality. You ever heard of a litz? Anyone know what's a litz in English? A litz is a scoffer, right? Somebody who just laughs and doesn't take anything seriously. You ever spoke to somebody like this? It could be about business. It could be about religion. You try sitting them down and talking to them. And what do? They make a joke. Leave me alone. What are you talking about? Corona. It's all a joke. And they laugh at all. Right? You ever met people like this? They're very cynical. And the way it's not just cynical, but they make a joke out of whatever you're trying to tell them. You tell them, hello, smoking. They say, come on, you believe those studies? Right? You tell them something about religion, they say, you ever saw? You have proof? You ever, look, here, I'm eating not kosher. God, go ahead, smite me, go ahead. Right? They make a joke. And that's a litz. The way to leave something in life is to laugh at it. If you want to be able to put something behind you, you have to be able to laugh at it. That's what a litz does. He laughs at something and he leaves it behind. But the truth is, this idea is actually not only for the bad, but we know everything can be used for the bad or for the good. And the idea of litzanut can and should be used for the right things. So sometimes we had a certain experience in life. There was a certain person that was bad for us, a certain relationship or something that we went through. And a lot of times we can't move forward. But part of leaving things behind is being able to look back and laugh at it. And if you're able to laugh at past mistakes that you have made, then you'll be able to move forward and not let it haunt you for the rest of your life. It's a very powerful concept. And the way we leave Egypt, God says, the way to leave Mizrahi, and leaving Egypt is not just a physical journey. You could walk out of Egypt, but up here, you're still there. You have never left. A person could be out of a relationship. They could have broken up. But wherever they go, whoever they date, they're still comparing to the old person. You can't say that they left the relationship. They're still in the relationship. So part of leaving places in life is leaving in our minds. God says to leave Egypt with your bodies is the easiest part, actually. I could take you out on the wings of an eagle in a second. I'll put you wherever. You could put you in Honolulu. You could go wherever you like. But it ain't gonna help. You got to leave Egypt physically, you got to leave mentally. And part of leaving Egypt behind is to be able to turn around and laugh at them. And the Jews actually had a very hard time with this. We know that in Makat Bechorot, God commanded the Jews to take the sheep, to slaughter the sheep, to put the blood on the doorpost, and then they had to eat Korban Pesach. And every year today, unfortunately, we don't have Korban Pesach, but we eat matzah and we eat afikoman zecher lekorban Pesach. We eat meat zecher lekorban Pesach, right? We try to, one day, hopefully, Bezat Hashem, Rabbi Amenu, we'll have the Bet HaMikdash and we'll be able to eat the Korban Pesach the right way. But the Jews in Egypt, they ate Korban Pesach, they ate the meat, but it was very interesting. The laws that surrounded the Korban, I don't know if you knew this, but they couldn't eat the meat however they liked. You know, usually a korban in the Beit HaMikdash, the Kohen could do whatever he wants with it. If he wants to have it cooked, if he wants to have it, on fire, barbecue, he wants to have it, raw, he can have it however he likes. Carvings, you pick it. You pickle it however you want. But when it comes to the Korban Pesach, the Torah is very clear. There's only one way, right? There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, but there is a wrong way to eat a Korban Pesach. What's the wrong way to eat a Korban Pesach? Any way except roasted. It has to be roasted. Not only that, it's got to be roasted fully. Not halfway, not medium. Which temperature would you like it, sir? Well done. You have to eat it well done. You got to eat it roasted. You got to eat it, and you cannot break any of the bones. All these laws surrounding the Korban Pesach. And why? For one reason. Because the Jewish people were afraid to show the Egyptians that they're eating the sheep. The sheep was the god of Egypt. And God says, enough is enough. Stop being afraid. I want you to eat it, and I want you to make it known that you're eating it. Whenever your neighbor is making a barbecue, you know it, right? I think the neighbors are barbecuing tonight. You smell it from down the block. But when a person's eating cooked meat, you don't smell it. You don't know, right? So part of the Jewish process of therapy was to just go into it, eat their God, make it loud and clear that you're eating their God. Stop being afraid. Stop tiptoeing around the Egyptians. Be proud of your Judaism. And sometimes today there are people that are mimicking the mistake that the Jews made back in Mizrahi, and they're tiptoeing around all the people around them to not show their religion, to not show what they're doing. They don't want to make a big deal. They don't want to fight. They don't want to get on their bad side. God says, you're in a free country. Do what you want. You practice the way you want. Don't worry about what people are going to say. Take the Egyptian god, kill it, make it very loud and clear that you're killing it. Roast it, completely roast it. Don't break the bones and try to hide the evidence. Just go ahead. Just be you. Be proud. Today, we live in a world of pride. Everyone's proud. Everyone's coming out. Everyone's doing. It's about time that Jews walk around with pride. That's what God says to them. And therefore, to leave Egypt is easy. But you have to go out. And part of leaving something, part of ending a chapter, is being able to look back and to laugh at it. That's the idea of litzanut, for the good. And therefore God says there's a chiyuv on Lil HaSeder, Pesach night. You sit with your children and you don't just tell them what happened, but you got to laugh at what happened and make a joke and show your children how foolish Paro is. And this is what we got to do. And by the way, the younger the children, the easier it is. We got to start right away when they're 2, 3, 4. Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night, right? Paro in pajamas, and why do they do that? Oh, it's so childish. It's not childish. It's what the Torah wants us to do. Look at this clown. Look at this loser. Look at this fool. And so today, what I would like to do is go through with you through the Be'er Yosef. The Be'er Yosef, a very important book, a book that we quote often. Rav Yosef Tzvi Salant. The Be'er Yosef gives some examples of what does it mean to mock Egypt. In what way specifically, just as examples. And by the way, it shouldn't end with these examples. We have to figure out our own examples. But he's going to just guide us a little bit. And please write this down, and maybe we'll pull it out on Leil Pesach. But what is the mockery specifically that happened in Mizrahi? So let's go through a few. Number one, what does Paro say to Moshe after the warning of a year by the Makat Arbe? He comes to Paro, he says, we're going to go, and Paro says, okay, you want to go with just the adults? And Moshe is like, no, we're taking the kids, we're taking Jiddo and Teta and Bubby and Zaidi and everybody. And Paro says, I don't think so. I don't like that idea. If you're going to serve God, just take the adults, the religious people, leave the children here, but you're not taking everybody. And he says, get out. So he goes out, and then he brings the grasshoppers, and Paro gets stubborn again. And finally, look at darkness. He says to Moshe, you know what? I changed my mind. Go. Take the people. Just Rak tzonechem ubkarchem yutzak. Leave the sheep behind. Vayomer Moshe, no. We're not only going to take our sheep, you are going to give us sacrifices as well, my friend. And Paro became stubborn. And take a look, Pasuk 28, chapter 10. Vayomer lo Paro, lech me'alai. And here Paro changes his tone. something that we never saw before. Paro is very interesting. The whole time he's very, very patient with Moshe. He lets him leave, he lets him come. Finally, Paro had it. He says, Lech me'alai, get out of here. Hishamer lecha, and be careful. Al tosef re'ot panai, you will never see me again. Ki beyom re'otcha panai, tamut. The day that you see me, you will die. Make sure, Moshe. And what does Moshe say? Vayomer Moshe, ken dibarta. Moshe says, you're right. Never see you again. You will never. And then, God actually does something here that's leaving protocol. God comes to Moshe in Paro's palace with a final vision, with a final prophecy. That never happened. Usually, God spoke to Moshe outside. But here, on the spot, God comes to Moshe and he says, Moshe, one more makah. Because why? Because Paro said, the day I see you again, you will die. And therefore, Moshe put in his mind, he's never going to come back. So God had to give him the last message here now while he was still looking at him in this final encounter. And he says to him, warn him about Makah Bechoro. Vayomer Moshe, and then Moshe opens his eyes and he says that God's gonna bring Makah Bechoro, and then all your servants will come and beg us to leave. And he turns around and he leaves. So it's amazing. Because basically, Paro over here is a boss. Get out of here. You will never see me again. Well, what ends up happening? What ends up happening? Makah Bechorot, when God brings the final plague, who was it that came searching for Moshe? Says, what the Torah tells us, Hu atzmo girsha mipanav. On the one hand, he said, get out of here, I never want to see you again. Ve'atahu mithanen lifnehem. And all of a sudden, he comes running and begging and looking for Moshe. There's no bigger joke. Yeah, when you see these bullies that act all macho, and then all of a sudden they're like these little scaredy cats. That's one joke that we see about Paro. He says, take a look. Bish'ad Makat Bechorot, the time of the firstborns getting killed. Paro, who's looking all macho like a king, like a god. Kam Rishon Mitato, he gets up from his bed. Velo kederech melachim, not like kings. When do kings get out of bed? Late. 8 a.m., 9 a.m., right? Today, Baruch Hashem, we're all kings. We all get up at that time. Paro gets up late. He gets up early. He's running around to his servants. He's running and screaming, Hechan Moshe, where's Moses? Where's Aaron? And he starts screaming, Kumu tzeu mitoch ami, please, leave. Get out of here. I let you go. Everything the way you want it. Not like I said. When I said I'm not letting you go, I am letting you go. When I said keep your kids, take your kids. I said keep your sheep, take your sheep. And yes, Moshe, I'll even give you my own sheep to sacrifice. Just please, go, get out of here. And not only that, uberachtem gam oti, just also if you have me in mind to your God and give me a bracha, mishe berach for the cholim, hu yebarech et Paro. So please, Moshe, go. This is the joke. You all tough? You all big? Get out of here. You never see me again. The day you see me, I'm going to kill you. And then all of a sudden, a few moments later, he's running like a little mouse. Look at him. Please, Moshe, I'll do anything. Right? What a joke. What a fool. You have nothing, Paro. So that's one example of the schok and la'ag, of the mockery that's being made out of Paro right here. And all of this, again, is part of the hardening of his heart. But not just hardening, but doubling down and kicking Moshe out. Okay, another example. Really, next week, we're going to see when the Jewish people leave, Am Yisrael leaves Egypt, and all of a sudden, Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim ki bara ha'am. All of a sudden they tell Paro that the people left. All of a sudden, Paro gets angry. Whoa, why'd they leave? What do we do that we let them go? And the question is, what do you mean? Why are you regretting letting the Jews leave all of a sudden? You yourselves told them to go. You begged them, Paro, in the middle of the night, please go. And our Midrash says something so beautiful. Rabotai, watch this. And this is a good question for next week, really. What changed that all of a sudden, by after the Jews left, and Paro begged them to leave, all of a sudden he changed his mind. He's like, whoa, where'd they go? Was he drunk? Did he wake up with a hangover, not remembering that you told him to leave? What happened? Not only him, his servants. Vayomru. And they say, there's a beautiful mashal to explain this. They give a parable. There was once a wealthy man. He sent his servant to go purchase fish. He went out and he brought him fish from the marketplace. However, the fish was spoiled. It was rotten. The rich man, he tasted a tiny piece. He said, this is what you bring me? I pay you and you go get me spoiled fish. And he decrees on his servant, or either you choose, either you eat the whole fish, or I beat you up, or you have to pay me thousands of dollars in a fine. Which one do you want? Well, the servant said, you know what? I'll go with option A. I'll eat the fish. He sits down with a fork and knife. He starts eating this spoiled fish. He tries downing it. All of a sudden, halfway in, he's barfing his brains out. The guy cannot even tolerate it. He says, you know what? I'm going to go with option 2. I'm going to just beat me up. 100 lashes? Go ahead. 100, go ahead. The guy gives 1, 2, 10, 30, 50, 60, and the guy's all beaten up. And finally he says, all right, I can't handle anymore. I'll give you $1,000. And says the Midrash, what a fool this guy is. The owner, the boss, the master said, 1 out of the 3. And he ended up doing all 3. He ate the fish, he got beaten up, and he had to give the money. And really, the Midrash says, this helps us understand what happened with Paro. The servant said, let's pick. In the beginning, Moshe said, let us go. If not, we're going to beat you up. We're going to give you makot. Okay. So the Mitzrim said, take a look at how foolish we are. If we would have just gotten the makot, that's fine. If we would have just sent them away for free, that's fine. If we would have just given them money, that's fine. But we ate it in all 3. We got makot, we gave them all our money, and they left. we suffered all 3 punishments. We could have just gotten away with 1. We could have just sent them. But we got all 3. And this is another example of the foolishness. Look how silly. Look what kind of clowns these Mitzrim are, these Egyptians. You think they're smart? They're dibs. Idiots. This is the mockery that we have to make. Example number 3. Paro, again, like a god, every morning he would have to go out to the Nile when no one was watching, and he would relieve himself of his bodily wastes, because if he was a god like he claimed, he doesn't need to use the bathroom. And his whole life, no one ever saw him using the bathroom. People wanted the impression that he was really a god. And throughout the Makot, Dam, Tzfardeya, as bad as it was, but the people at the end of the day, they had food. Food is staple, sustenance. But what that all changed in which Makkah? That all changed in Makat Arbe. When the grasshoppers come and there's no food left. And they ate everything. And all of a sudden Paro is there and he can't even provide for his people. And the people come and say, go ahead, Mr. Paro, God Paro, give us food. And now Paro's like, right. Hamana. So Paro over here, everyone starts realizing this guy's a buffoon, this guy's a joke, this guy can't do nothing. So that's another example again of the schok that God wants us to think about when we're talking about Yetziat Mitzrayim. Finally. And this is the last one that he brings as an example. And again, our job is not to end over here. This is just to start us up. But then to ask ourselves, what could we think of? What more jokes? How much more foolish does Egypt look than even this? Finally, he says, you look at the sixth plague. What was the sixth plague? Right? Boils, sorry. Seventh plague. Barad. What was Barad? Barad is hail. The hail, we know, came down and it destroyed a lot of the produce. However, the Pasuk says, back by the hail, there were certain crops that did not get affected. Right? Certain crops that were very soft, that were still unripe, and the hail, the hail only crushes hard things. Pieces of grass, they don't get hurt by hail, they just bend and they come back up. So certain produce that was still early in its stages didn't get affected. Ve'amru Chazal, and our rabbis say, it's really a wonder that these things remained. And after the hail came to an end, all the Egyptians go out to their fields and they look around. Is there any food? What are we going to eat? Ve'ra'u, and they saw all the destruction and they started being in pain. Oh no, we have nothing to eat. Ulam, but then they saw the wheat, they saw the kusemet, they saw these produce, they saw these grains, and that they were still untouched. And the Egyptians started partying. Woo! We made it! We still got food! Pop the champagne! And all of a sudden, what happens? They're excited, they have food left. All of a sudden, God sends the grasshoppers. And what do the grasshoppers do? They wipe out whatever wheat remained. They wiped out whatever produce remained. They took it all out. And so the Egyptians, they come back out and they remained empty. They remained with nothing. So God is just playing with them. God's toiling with them. And all of this is midah keneged midah, measure for measure for what they did to the Jewish people. And therefore, this is the hit'alelut. These are the jokes that God played. And we have a responsibility to be able to study not only about this intellectually, but to look back and to laugh at what went through the Egyptians, at the torture and the foolish mistakes and choices that they made, and how they really got the worst of all different options. There's one final example that he brings over here, not from the Er Yosef, but from the Sefer Eved HaMelech. And take a look at what it says over here. Very interesting. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's always a silver lining in the darkest cloud, correct? Think about the plague of grasshoppers. It's a lot of grasshoppers, and they took all our food. But if you were an Egyptian and you went to therapy the next morning, imagine the Egyptians wake up and they're going to therapy, and they're like sitting there and they're saying, these plagues are so hard. And the therapist is there, but listen, you need to make the best out of it. Don't worry. Hashem is, I don't know if he said Hashem, but there is a plan, and it will be good. So, and look at the bright side. Look at the bright side. We could at least eat grasshoppers, right? Okay, that's true. There's a lot of grasshoppers. So they started catching all these grasshoppers. They killed all these grasshoppers. They start roasting these grasshoppers. And now our rabbis tell us that the only advantage of this plague, which was the grasshoppers, imagine their excitement. They stored all these grasshoppers in the fridge. They put them away in the freezer. But the Pasuk says that God says to Moshe, okay, time to end the plague. Rabotai, take a look. Chapter 10. Pasuk 19. Vayahafoch Adonai ruach yam. The Lord brought a very strong west wind. Vayisa et ha'arbeh, and he removed the locusts. Vayitka'ehu yam masuf. Okay? So, Paro says, Moshe, I'm sorry. Moshe's like, all right, we'll remove the locusts. He removes the locusts. But the pasuk then adds something. Lo nish'ar arbe ehad. Not a single locust remained. Bechol gevul Mitzrayim. What is that adding? Not a single locust remained. Take a look at what Rashi says. Af hameluhim. Not even those which they salted. Even the grasshoppers that were salted that were going to eat for dinner that night. Yishtabashemo. God brought a wind, and even the dead grasshoppers were removed from Egypt. So not even the silver lining, not even the positive remained for them in Egypt. Compare this, by the way, with the plague of frogs. When the frogs were brought on Mitzrayim, after they died, what happened? The frogs didn't go back into the water. Many frogs remained out and they just stayed dead on the side of the road, and they started accumulating bacteria and they started smelling. You ever saw a dead frog? Smells, right? Imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of frogs everywhere, dead all over the streets. So when it comes to the grasshoppers, God takes the grasshoppers and he removes them. Not even the edible ones stayed. But when it comes to the frogs, God made sure to keep the dead frogs in Egypt for the Egyptians to enjoy. So these are amazing ideas about, and this is just, again, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we could dig deeper and realize what Hashem did to Mizrahi, and it's our obligation to teach and remind ourselves and our children the brilliancy that at the end of the day, there's En Kelokenu, En Kadonenu, En Kemalkenu, En Kemoshienu. There is nobody like God. There's nobody that's second to God. There's no second place. It's not even a different league. There's no other league. It's not a competition. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu HaKol Yachol. And when we read about it and when we study about it, but we also make sure to laugh about it, then we're able to put it behind us all of these slavery. And that is why I think as Jews, we are so successful. Bechol dor vador. And you read today, unfortunately, you see today different influencers and different people in social media now blaming, you saw this one, they're blaming the Jews for Corona, some people. It's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff. Okay, I want to see them say xenophobia over here. But they're not going to say it, right? But it's crazy. No matter what, wherever we are in the world, it looks like you can never get a break. Bechol dor vador, every generation, omdim aleinu lechalotenu. They're getting up against us. They're trying to kill us. What the Jew has went through by far surpasses what any other nation has went through. And yet we are here and we are successful because the Jew has this ability to look and laugh at his problems and to put them behind him through that laughter and to be able to look forward and to be able to say, you know what, that's what we went through, but look what happened to them. And to laugh and to keep it behind us and to be able to move forward in a much stronger way. Okay, I think we'll stop over here, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.